Thinking Orthodox, Understanding and Acquiring the Orthodox Christian Mind by Dr. Jeannie Constantinou. This book left me with some very distinct impressions, and in this video, I'm going to unpack three different directions. These videos where I talk about books, they're about how the book leaves me, not so much retelling the content of the book. I do recommend this book, especially if you're a catechumen in the Eastern Orthodox Church. It's very helpful. Now, here are the three distinct impressions that I got from this book. Number one, there's a word called Phronema, which really talks about your attitude, your mindset, your stance, but it actually embodies the whole tradition of the church. Your phronema is how you see and live in the world, your basic attitudes, your basic outlook. I'm going to unpack that a little bit. Number two, it's talking about safeguarding the theological depth and richness of the church, which ultimately is protecting God's revelation to man. This part of the book spans many pages and really focuses on the importance of being prepared before you discuss anything theological. It contains a lot of admonitions as well as a lot of safeguarding of what it means to be a true theologian and pointing to examples of where people go wrong with trying to practice theology. So I'm going to talk about that. And number three, the deep patterns of worship, sacred practice, and understandings that lie within the Orthodox Christian heart. And that follows from the whole notion of the Phronema, but it talks more about how important it is for an Eastern Orthodox Christian to be living the faith, not just thinking about or having ideas about faith. All three of these distinct directions that I've laid out for you are inextricably woven together. So let's start with number one, Phronema. So the word Phronema, meaning mindset, stance, attitude, outlook. Dr. Jeannie Constantinou does a wonderful job showing us how an Eastern Orthodox Christian doesn't just have ideas that they remember, because that would be to mistake what a phronema is. A phronema is not just objective ideas that you contain in your head, like 2 + 2 = 4. And it's not ideas about the world, like this desk is brown. It's an embodied reality. And this embodied reality gives you deep intuitions and perceptual understandings about the world around you through an Orthodox Christian mind. Now, you can also have a Western phronema. And often what happens, according to Dr. Jeannie Constantinou, is that Westerners don't understand the Eastern Orthodox phronema because they have this Western phronema that thinks in terms of deductive reasoning and objective facts and explicit analysis, whereas there's something more subtle and poignant about the Orthodox phronema that is based in tradition. And tradition and phronema are tightly woven together as well, because holy tradition is not just things that people were taught and remembered and then were passed down, but holy tradition is actually the lived experience of the fathers of the church being transmitted experientially to the next generation, and then the next generation, and then the next generation. And this is occurring even till today. Now, to give you even a deeper sense of what this word phronema means, there are some things which we know, but we just don't know how we know them. And Dr. Jeannie in this book really shows us that when you're an Eastern Orthodox Christian, you will have, if you're really living the faith, you will have reactions to certain heresies, to certain statements, to certain public displays, which tell you if something is appropriate or inappropriate. And because of that, because you have those reactions, what it points back to is that you have had the faith instilled within you. And the reason for this is because ultimately the Holy Spirit guides the church, and it's not just about what you know explicitly, as I've said, but it's about your embodied reality. And so as you live the faith, the mindset, the tradition, the outlook of the Holy Fathers is in the mind of Christ is eventually imbued within your being. So even though you didn't take a class where somebody told you that a certain thing was the case, you just know it deep within. And she uses examples in this book. For example, she went to Catholic girls' school when she was a child, and they would teach her, say certain things that were just totally unorthodox, but she didn't ever remember anyone telling her exactly that, this is not how we view things in the church. She just knew it implicitly because of her experience in the church. For example, when she was given a penance by one of the instructor, I think maybe the librarian it was at the Catholic girls' school, it was giving a penance for something to do with returning a book, but the way that was given was in completely not Orthodox fashion and represented a legalistic Western view, which does not accord with the Orthodox Phronema. So in a certain sense, I can take myself as an example. As I come into the Eastern Orthodox Church, phronemas are colliding, right? So I'm a catechumen, and I've got all this history outside of the church in the Western world with my education, with my understanding of psychology, as somebody who has studied the worldly knowledge, right? And so I've got this phronema, and as I come into the church, I don't take my phronema and try to cram it into the church. That doesn't work. I won't last as an Orthodox Christian. And I think that's fairly basic in this book, that claim. But instead, I have to adopt and acquire the mind of the church. And so that requires me to be willing to let go and to humble myself. And that leads into the next topic of this book, the theology and the importance of preparing for theology. In a very basic sense, theology can just be seen as the process of praying. But to be a theologian, while yes, it is one who prays, is also a holy and awesome responsibility, which is not for everyone. And Dr. Jeannie in this book warns us that we should not talk about God lightly. We should be very prepared before we even utter the word God or dare to speak of any of the theological teachings of the church. And there are layers of theology. Some are high and should probably not be discussed online, even, according to Dr. Jeannie, whereas some are less lofty and more basic to the day-to-day faith of an Orthodox Christian, and the degree to which one can talk about it depends on their preparation, their experience, and their phronema. And so Dr. Jeannie here at length tells about the dangers of going into heresy, of leading yourself into heresy, of being arrogant and thinking that one has the right to teach something when in reality they should be quiet and learn. And it was helpful for me as a catechumen to realize, I have this YouTube channel. I do have a background in psychology, as I've mentioned. So in some sense, there are things which I am qualified to speak on and things which I defer to the church on. And that has been my intention since the beginning of this channel. But this book has helped me even more so understand that process by which I speak about God needs to be done very, very carefully. So I think she's very thorough in that area. Now, there was one part that left me a little confused, and perhaps if I ever get the chance to talk to Dr. Jeannie, I did have an email exchange with her, and she's possibly, if we can find time in her busy schedule, might come on to my YouTube channel for an interview in the next couple months. One question that I would have for her that confused me is that when she said that certain theological topics maybe shouldn't be discussed online, regardless of, it seemed to indicate, regardless of your position, whether you're a theologian or not, that there are certain lofty distinctions, lofty theological truths that we should refrain from speaking about. And I don't see that being the case uniformly within the Orthodox Church. It seems like there are Orthodox theologians who are openly discussing theological precious information online, such as the energies, essence distinction, etc. And I'm wondering if that's just because there's a difference of opinions, that some theologians believe it's more okay to be open about this and post YouTube videos about this, and others don't. Anyways, if you know more about this, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts in the comments. But that would be one question I have, is maybe there's just differences of opinions within the church on that. But for the most part, the theological section makes sense, very thorough. She clearly wants to convey to us that it is very inappropriate to speak theologically if you're not properly prepared. So, and to go to number 3, properly prepared is number 3, is being properly prepared. And to be properly prepared involves, it's better to live the faith and not talk about it than to talk about the faith and not live it. And she does a great job explaining to us why that is. And it's very common sense, but salvation in the Orthodox Church is not taken lightly. What's at stake is eternal life with God, and we are judged by God according to the faith. And therefore, every word that comes out of our mouth, we are accountable for. And there's virtue in silence. There's virtue in doing our best to act out the commandments, so that when we do speak, we are speaking from a place of consistency rather than from a place of hypocrisy. And it's arguable that it's probably impossible to acquire the Phronema of the church without participating in the active life, spiritual life of the church. The active spiritual life of the church, which transfigures and transforms the human soul and eventually leads to the process of deification and communion with God. So this book, in a lot of ways, is it's not telling you how to get close to God. It's not like some of the other books I've reviewed, like Orthodox Psychotherapy, which is a treatise on the process of purification, illumination, and deification. Or it's not like Christos Ionaris' Freedom of Morality, which is talking about the way in which we relate to the world from an ethical perspective that is relational to God rather than legalistic and Western. But this book, in some ways, is telling you, like, there is a mind of the church. There are certain things that are appropriate to think and certain things that are not appropriate to think. And that sounds like a weird thing to say. But she's not policing. This is not a legalistic book policing what you can and cannot think. It's showing you that if you have the mindset of the church, certain things won't even occur to you as reasonable or logical, because you will perceive in such a way that is consistent with the mind of the fathers. And this is the whole concept of Phronema is very consistent with what I've understood of an Eastern Orthodox spirit, which is to say that we inculcate, assimilate, and interact with the world through the faith. We don't start up here in the mind rationally. And that's another thing she does in this book, is divides the rationalistic Western Christian Phronema, which tries to deduce its way to God and creates God as an idea and creates these rational approaches to the Lord. And Dr. Jeannie here says, no, rationality is very limited. We are created beings, and there is something much more beautiful and powerful about a simple faith than having this deductive system that is self-referential, that talks about God without actually being in relationship to the true God. And she tells us that we should be careful not to go down certain rabbit holes which attempt to explore questions that don't have logical human answers. Like, why is the Old Testament so violent? There's a way in which somebody can take a question like that and just wrestle with it indefinitely and make no closer connection with God. Or she uses the example why, if God created Adam and Eve, then, and death entered the world through sin, then why did we find dinosaur fossils? Right? She's saying, like, you're not getting, that's not an Eastern Orthodox Phronema. You're not getting it. You're missing the point. So that to me was a palpable illustration where she was saying, live the faith in your heart, live the faith of the church. Be careful not to endlessly perseverate on issues that are, first of all, none of our business. There are certain mysteries which it's okay to leave to God. And second of all, not productive. So at any rate, I hope you enjoyed this book review. I obviously recommend this book, Thinking Orthodox, very helpful. And speaking of Thinking Orthodox, I am going to go attend liturgy. So Divine Liturgy this morning. So God bless you all, and blessed Holy Ascension.